Last week I started my in-depth series on the major scale modes, and today I'll be looking at the Lydian mode. If you missed the Introduction to Modes lesson I put out last week, you can find it on the channel. I covered the basics of how the major scale modes are constructed and how I like to think about them. If you feel comfortable with the basics of modes already, then continue on here. If not, go check out that video. In last week's video, I mentioned that I think about the modes from brightest to darkest, so over the next 7 weeks, I'm going to cover each of the modes in depth, starting with the brightest, Lydian. But before I get into this, subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss any of these mode lessons. The Lydian mode is the same as the major scale with one very important difference, the raised or sharp 4. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7. In the key of C, that would be C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. The first step to really understanding a mode's sound is to find the specific notes that give that mode its unique character. The most important note in Lydian is, of course, that sharp 4. That's really the defining sound of Lydian. When I'm going through these different modes, I'm looking for the note or notes that are different from the other modes. That sharp 4 is the only difference between a major scale and Lydian, but it's a really big difference. The other two most important notes in Lydian are the major third and the major seventh. The third is telling you that this is a major mode, meaning the root chord in Lydian is a major chord. And the major seventh is telling you that the root chord with an added seventh is a major seventh chord. If I play these three notes over a C drone, the third E, the sharp 4 F sharp, and the major 7 B, you'll really start to hear that Lydian sound. Playing over a drone like this and just kind of living in that Lydian sound is a fantastic way to get a feel for this mode. It's bright and uplifting, but it's also ethereal and dreamy. It's kind of like the major scale's more interesting brother. Now let's build a Lydian chord, a chord that has all of these important notes from Lydian, and that chord is a major 7 sharp 11 chord. In C, that would be C, E, G, B, F sharp. Notice this contains the third, sharp 4, and 7th. And it really captures the sound of Lydian all in one chord. This is a modal chord, a single chord which captures the sound and vibe of a mode. If I see this chord, I'm instantly thinking Lydian. Now, it's pretty common to include the 9th in this chord as well. C major 9 sharp 11 is C, E, G, B, D, F sharp. Here are some guitar voicings that I like for this chord. Now, it's fairly common to omit the 5th in extended chords like these, so you might see that in a few of these voicings, like this one. No 5th there. Get the low note in there. Or this. Like this one. Or this one. You can also have modal chord progressions. Here are the 7 basic triads that come from Lydian in the key of C. C, D, E minor, F sharp diminished, G, A minor, B minor. The order of this chord type is the same in every key, and obviously it's important to learn all of these modes in every key. The most common Lydian progression is a 1 major chord to a 2 major chord, so C to D in this case. And this is especially obvious if I drone that low root note underneath. So C to D over C. My first introduction to Lydian was the Joe Satriani song Flying in a Blue Dream, which uses this exact progression in reverse. The most obvious modal chord progressions are usually these simple 2-chord vamps, a vamp being a short repeated chord progression. Another Lydian vamp is 1 to 7, C to B minor in this case, and these chords can be extended as well. I could do C major 7 to B minor 7 or B minor 11. Another good vamp is 1 major 7 to 5 major 7, so C major 7 to G major 7. I can make those ninths as well. You can make longer Lydian progressions as well, for example 1 to 2 to 5 to 1, C, D, G, C, especially if I inverted that 5 chord, C, D, G over B to C. And I could extend these as well, C major 7, D over C, G over B, and C major 7. There's lots of options for building modal chord progressions. The most important thing is that the root of that mode needs to be the focal point. If I did a C, D, G, and just held on the G, our ears are so used to these major scale resolutions that it just sounds like I'm in the key of G major. But if I drone that C, or I add some extensions and inversions, I can really keep that C as the focal point. If you're wanting to write something in Lydian, I would start with any of the 3 things I just mentioned. Either write a single note riff in Lydian focused on those important notes, or use that major 7#11 chord as the foundation, or choose a simple Lydian progression. These are all great ways to start incorporating this sound into your writing. Here are a few examples of Lydian in my own music. The main motif from my song Surface Tension uses E Lydian, and it's a pretty good showcase of that dreamy Lydian sound. In Solar Storm, the clean middle section uses Lydian as a nice contrast to the darker sounds found throughout the rest of the song. And I also use a couple of different Lydian sounds during the solo. In Paramnesia, I used Lydian in the verse for that spacey vibe. Here it goes from A Lydian up to C Lydian and then to E flat Lydian, and this is another great way to use modes, to take a mode and move it between different keys. Here it really gives it that fusion sound. Lydian is one of my favorite modes, definitely a top 3 major scale mode for me. You can get that bright major sound without the cliche sappy sound of the major scale, and this is an incredibly common mode in prog. Someone like Pliny comes to mind. Lydian will give you that sound right away. Hopefully some of these tips can help you to start using the Lydian mode more effectively. Next week we'll be looking at the Ionian mode or the major scale. That should be an interesting one. But if you enjoyed this lesson, subscribe, hit the bell notification, like, comment, share, and I'll see you all next week. Till then, stay proggy.